What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today we have a first. We're shooting in 4K, and we have our very own guest, Rosanna Procopio. But to you, she's Mommy Procopio. And we're shooting in 4K, so I don't want to see any nasty comments about how hot she is and stuff in the comments. She's taken, boys and girls, okay? Today's not about you. It's about us and knives. The little segment we're doing is asking your mom questions about Japanese kitchen knives. And perhaps the first one I have for you is, do you have any regrets? You started this. You bought me a knife, and now I have over 20 knives. Tell the camera, how do you feel? Regrets or no?
No regrets at all. I think it's a very nice hobby.
Very nice, very nice. Now, before we move on to the next few questions, I have two questions straight from Instagram. My buddy D. Shanery would like to ask Mommy Procopio, have you ever used steak knives for anything other than steak?
Probably.
What would that have probably been?
Cheese.
Cheese, okay. Why not, right? You got a steak knife, it's sharp, it's serrated. Actually, are your steak knives serrated or not?
I don't know
Do
what it
they
means.
have the little teeth?
Yes, they do.
Okay, so, serrated steak knife, really, to be honest, you can use that on cherry tomato, you can use that on whatever you want. Just a question that D. Shanery wanted us to ask, and there you go. Now, the second question, that one's going to take us through this list of knives, which is really nice. This is a good buddy of mine. You know him, Mom, as the tattooed chef from Slovenia. He made me that really nice 240mm Kiritsuki. And what are we going to tell him? If you haven't watched that video, it's right here. All right, so basically his question is, he wants me to take my mom through the different knife types, see if she knows what they are in terms of what's the Japanese name for the style of knife, and then what it's used for. So let's just dive right into it. This guy.
Petty.
A petty? She's right.
150.
This is a Asaizan petty, the late Asaizan. This one is about 75mm. Now we're going to move on to the next knife. What is this, Mommy Procopio?
Your first Sean knife petty.
Oh, it sounds like this one has a story. So what's the story behind this one? So she is right, it's a petty. It's 150mm. This one's VG10. This one, by the way, is also VG10. So what's the story behind this one? Why is this one important?
We were in France and we needed to find something for Frankie, who's very hard to buy presents to. And we ended up saying, well, he likes cooking, so why not a knife?
Why not? How old was I when you gave me this knife?
16.
How old did I turn a few days ago?
35.
19 years of owning this knife. This knife, if you like my pictures, if you like my Japanese knife collection, sure, you can thank this knife, but you gotta thank Mommy Rosanna. And by the way, of course, Mommy Rosanna is a special guest here because, she's the contributor of half my genome, even a little bit more because of that mitochondrial DNA. So thank you for making me into this, for giving our viewers some quality content.
Of course.
Mommy Procopio. All right, moving on to the next knife. So this is the knife that started it all. Again, Shun Classic, 150mm VG10. Now, of course, Mom, why are these both called petties? Is there a reason?
To cut small items.
She's not wrong. This one is one that I would say would probably be my grandma's favorite if she had to see all my knives. Because this knife, which we still call a petty, even though it's a Japanese style petty, it's also more of a paring knife. So anything you would use to cut an item in hand, paring a lemon, cutting the skin off a peach, slicing strawberries in hand. This is a petty, and it's 75mm. Typically, petties will go in range from about 75 to 150. So you're pretty much seeing the extremity of the range and length of a petty. This one, when I first got it, I knew very little about Japanese kitchen knives. They also called it the sandwich knife, which I think is also really opportune because what it means is for anything that you would need to put together a tasty sandwich, you can use a petty. You gotta dice some tomatoes, dice some cucumber, open your bread, and so this is a bit of a utility knife in terms of like the Western language of knives. So we have two petties here. What about this one?
That one is a beautiful knife.
This one is a beautiful knife. She's not wrong. It's probably one of the more beautiful knives. I can ask you why, but style, do you remember?
The design, yes. I think it's made of steel.
Definitely made of steel. But what's this one called? So these are petties. So this one is a santoku.
Santoku.
Which she knows, right? I just forgot. No big deal. And a santoku, Mom, it means a knife of three virtues. Slicing, dicing, and chopping. Right, so you would use this knife for slicing, dicing, and chopping. Now, when people move into the Japanese kitchen world for the first time, a lot of people often recommend you use a santoku because it's a knife that can do just about anything. It's a knife whose whose tip is a little further off the plane, the horizontal plane, than the heel, which means it typically gives you some rockability motion, which is very nice. And yes, actually, this is one of my favorite knives because it's a Tsukasa Hinura, very rare line. It's the river jump, as you can tell from the torsion Damascus here, then jumping to here. But a sweet handle by Dustin from Real Sharp Knife. All right, moving on. This is a knife my mom's had a really good time using during her stay here in Edmonton. Let's see if she remembers.
Nikiri.
Nailed it. What a pro. This one is a Nikiri. This one's from Origin Goods in Winnipeg, so this is a Canadian knife. Canadian made knife, but it's Japanese style Nikiri. And what did you say this one's used for what?
Veggies.
And what's the advantage of using a Nikiri so far over the other ones?
You can rock it.
It's that when you're cutting a vegetable, because you have such a flat belly, right? You don't end up with those stringy bell peppers, right? For example, if you're cutting a bell pepper this way, you won't end up with that one tiny segment where everything's attached. So that's the advantage of a Nikiri. Now this one. Oh, so close. The letters are right. What did you say? Say it louder.
Tank. Tanka.
Tanka, banka.
Banka.
So this one's a banka. So a banka is really kind of a fusion between a santoku and the Nikiri. So a banka, a little bit like a Nikiri, which has a fairly flat profile, really has that accentuated tip, which of course the santoku doesn't have, but essentially the point is it's still a bit of a fusion of both. And because it's a fusion of both, it also means that in terms of how it's being used, it can be used in a way that's going to be versatile like a Nikiri or a santoku. This one is by Saji-san, and I believe it is, I think it's Aogomi Super. I feel like most of my knives are. This one is Rainbow Damascus as well. And now, last but not least, in terms of the typical knives that we have, this is also my mom's what?
Gyoto.
No, it's Frankie's Gyoto, but it's your favorite knife.
It's my favorite
right?
knife.
So out of all knives in my collection, 22 plus knives, this is my favorite knife. When people ask me if I had to get rid of all of them, which would I keep? If I could only keep one, it's a very cruel question people ask me. But my answer, ever since the first person asked, has always been particularly this Gyoto. This Fujiwara Denka no Hoto Gyoto with a handle by Origin Goods, which is the same smith who made this Nikiri. So Gyoto, how do we use this one? How is it different from the other knives? Any idea? Do you remember what Gyoto means?
It has a longer blade.
Yeah, so typically a Gyoto will have...
meats.
Yeah, oh, there you go. She nailed it. So Gyo means cow. So this is literally translates Gyoto to cow sword. It has a bit more of a beef or meat bias, and so you can cut meat with it. You can cut vegetables as well. And really, we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty of it, but a Gyoto is not a traditional Japanese knife. If we're talking about traditional Japanese knives, we'd be talking about, say, the santoku, a petty, and a Nikiri, a lot more than the banka and a Gyoto. These are knives that have been made to kind of appeal to like more of a Western culture, but of course you do still use them in Japan, but it's not your main knife. So this is a 210 Gyoto by Fujiwara-san. And now what I thought would be fun is, yeah, I know, we still have more knives, right? 4 more. But these knives, I'll tell you one thing, they are all much more unique and specialized in terms of how they are being used than the ones we've just gone through. And so we'll start with this one. I mean, do you want to guess or do you want me to tell you what all 4 are used for?
Go for it.
So this one is also one of my favorite knives. I say that a lot. This one is a Takeda Honesuki. I'm not sure what Honesuki translates to, but the specific use of this knife, it's a chicken butchery knife. So all that chicken stock I always tell you I'm making on and off every few months for risotto, this is the knife. So these are 4 very specialized knives. This one is a Takeda Honesuki with a beautiful gray box elder handle. Then the next specialized one we have is this one. Any ideas? What knife does this kind of look like? Here. Funny enough, shape-wise, right? Exactly. It'll remind you of a santoku, but it does nothing like a santoku should do. right? Yeah, so she is right. It's much thicker behind the edge. This is the first single bevel knife that I'm showing you, Mom. So what single bevel means is if you take a look at this angle right here, right, you have a slope, but you don't have a slope on the other side like the other knives.
Correct.
So what that means in the way they're building it is the surface here is actually concave. So there's a bit of an air pocket, and this is a knife that you use for fish butchery. So this is the chicken butchery knife. This is a fish butchery knife, so that when you're sliding through the scales, through the spine, you have part of the knife that's just gliding past the spine and doesn't cut into it. And then the other side of the knife, which basically will have that air pocket, creates minimal friction so you don't tear the flesh of fish, because the flesh of fish is very fragile. And it's also scalpel sharp because most straight razors are going to be single bevel too. So this is a Deba by Saji-san. Next specialized one is this one.
I saw you use that one.
For what? What did I use it for? If you remember what you used it for, you're basically right on the purpose of this knife.
Meat.
Yeah. So this one is a Sujihiki. This one is by Kurosaki-san. It's the Fujin series, 250 millimeters, SRS 13 steel, I believe, with the, of course, turquoise handle. And Sujihiki is basically a meat slicing tool. So there are some knives that I use to cut raw protein. This one I really like for my cooked protein. So I'll cook a ribeye, anything else that's a cooked protein. And this is the knife. So beautiful Sujihiki. Nice handle, right?
Yep.
Beautiful. And then last but not least, we have one that you might think resembles the Sujihiki. Being very careful to not stab myself. And that is this one here. Any ideas? This one's got a great story. This is the first Yanagiba that Shibata-san has ever produced out of his shop. Not the second one, the very first one. I went and I picked it up myself in Fukuyama City in December of 2017, I think. So almost 4 years already in my possession, SRS 13. And the Yanagiba, a lot like the Deba, is also for fish and also single bevel. But this one doesn't have a spine that's as thick as the Deba, because the Deba you can use to, say, push the heel. So this is the heel, right? That sharp bit through the head of the fish. And therefore you got to give the knife more robustness. This one is all about delicate work. So sashimi, fillet, sashimi. You have a raw piece of fish protein in front of you, and you're about to serve someone, and maybe if it's a restaurant, charge them quite a bit of money for some nice raw fish. Again, scalpel sharp. You have that nice pocket of air that makes sure that the fish flesh will not tear. And this one is 270 millimeters, so the longest knife that I own. And so we've asked the questions that the public have wanted you to answer. Now I'm going to ask you a few questions which you definitely know the answer of. How many Japanese kitchen knives do you have?
5.
What are they? Remember?
3 petties, 1 Kyoto. I think it's 4 actually.
Sentoku.
On this one.
Right?
Yeah.
So the first knife that started her collection was a knife that I bought her, I think, off Amazon. It was a Sentoku Classic Series Shun.
Yep.
Then together we bought her first handmade fine Japanese kitchen knife. She came to Edmonton, we went to Knifeware, and she got a 150 millimeter Masakage Koishi series. Her second one is, there was a Knifeware, what do we call it? It wasn't a fair, but a Knifeware.
Like a pop-up.
Like a pop-up shop in Montreal at a bakery. She went there and got herself a Fujimoto Nishiji Ajikiri, which is kind of like a small petty that looks like a Deba with a bit more belly height and even that steep curvature from the tip. Not sure the length of that one. Do you remember? It was less than the 150.
Yeah, it was, I think, 140, 140.
Okay, so maybe a 130 to 140. Then after that, I believe we were gonna go on our first mother-son trip to Japan, but pandemic happened. And so kind of a way of me saying, like, I'm sorry, like, clearly I had no control over this, but use this knife and think of me and think of the trip that we would have had. I bought her a freaking sweet Kotetsu 210 millimeter Gyoto Type 3 series with a nice custom handle from Dustin, who's the one who put the handle on this river jump. So that's her Kotetsu Type 3. And then lastly, again off Knifeware, she got herself a Masakage Kiri petty, and this is the shortest one of the 3
Correct.
petties you have.
Yes.
Do you remember what its length is?
I think it's about 140.
About 140?
Yeah.
Okay, so almost like the Fujimoto, but it would have a very different shape from the Fujimoto Nishiji. So that's the 5. Did we miss anything?
No.
And if you were to buy, so this is a question coming from me now. If you were to buy your next Japanese kitchen knife, what would it be?
Nikiri.
Nikiri?
Correct.
Why a Nikiri?
Because I like to cut veggies, and the other ones I find it doesn't cut as well. So I would probably go for a Nikiri.
So she'd get a Nikiri because it's not in her kit. She'd get a Nikiri because it's a veggie specific knife. And so if you also remember from the last video, if you haven't seen it, link is up here. But I said how I don't want to be growing my collection indefinitely. I actually just bought myself a new knife, right? So here I am saying I don't want to grow it indefinitely. And I did mention how I thought I was going to sell my Sentoku from Fujiwara, except I spent way too many hours and I'm really bonded. So I'm not selling this. So the only way that I can deal with having bought a new knife is to give a new knife. So right here in front of everyone, this is your new knife that you're going home with.
Thank you.
Is it cute?
Very
This is a Nikiri. She wanted a Nikiri, and I'm her son, so I'm going to give her a really awesome knife. So I bought myself a new knife for my birthday, because that's how I roll. But now this is yours.
Thank you so much.
And that's why I wanted to do a video. She thought I was going to do a video to make fun of her, because I do that. I make fun of things. Life is short and you gotta laugh, but I don't think we're laughing now.
No, we're
This
not.
is your Nikiri. Did I make fun of you? Not
No.
too much?
It was so worth it.
You pretty much, I told you it was going to be worth it. I told her, just trust me, it'll be worth it. And so this is your brand new, well, it's not brand new Nikiri.
That's fine.
But it's a Nikiri. It's staying in the family. I've given her a knife. Now I can add my brand new knife, which of course you won't know until I make an unboxing video. But now it's good. Now there's a new gap. I don't need to put any new knife bars. You get a knife, something you wanted, something she's used. It's a knife she's used the most ever since she got here in Edmonton 8 days ago. And so, voila.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to tell the camera?
Thank you so much for watching.
Thanks for watching. This was your segment of Frankie Asks Mommy Rosanna, Mommy Procopio, whatever you want to call her. Some knife questions. She's done absolutely awesome. Hopefully this was knowledgeable information for all of you. Hey, maybe get your mom into Japanese kitchen knives too if she isn't already. See you next time. Like, subscribe, hit that bell button. And yeah, you'll see a new knife in the video after this. Later.
Bye.
There's your knife.